Hi everybody, welcome back to another business analysis video. In today's video, I'll be talking to you about how to write good user stories using the INVEST method, which is an acronym which stands for independent, negotiable, valuable, estimable, small, and testable. Before I go into further details about the INVEST method, I want to quickly define for you what a user story is. Now, I have a few YouTube videos about user stories and writing requirements within the Agile environment. So please go and watch those videos for you to understand the deeper details of user story writing. Now, user story is a description of a product feature from the end user's perspective. It's a way of writing requirements, and within your user story you identify who, what, and why. Who needs this requirement, what do they need, and why do they need this requirement. Please think of the user story as not a document, but a means of having a conversation with your stakeholders, with members of your team to ensure that that requirement is met. Now, I also want you to think of the INVEST method or your user story as represented on an iceberg immersed in water. The top bit that is exposed to the air is your user story. But in order for you to ensure that that user story is really good, the INVEST method comes beneath the iceberg, beneath the water. Okay, so there are various things that you need to think about when writing your user story so that your team are able to deliver the story or the requirements as expected. So the INVEST method, like I mentioned, is an acronym used to remind us of the attributes of a good user story. It provides a quality check used to evaluate and improve user stories and other product backlog items. Now let's look at these in further details. The INVEST method for writing good user stories. The I stands for independent. Your user stories should be independent of other user stories within your product backlog and should not depend on other user stories, okay? They should be able to be delivered without having to depend on any other user story within your backlog. This will determine that your user story is good. Now, the next one is the negotiable. Once the team have assessed or discussed the possibility of that requirement to be met, and if they have better ideas or better ways of delivering that requirement, that user story should be negotiable. We should be able to negotiate a better way of delivering the user story. Now, generally, user stories come from your stakeholders and they're not aware of what can and can't be done or how best to represent or make their work better. So it's up to the team to brainstorm ideas and come up with various ways in which that requirement can be met. And that particular negotiable requirement should be able to be changed or adapted to the user's needs and expectations. Now, the V in INVEST, which stands for valuable. Your user story should add value for the delivery of your product, for the delivery for the organization. Okay, so it should have great value. What value add does it bring? How does it improve the work of the user? This is why your user story identifies who, what, and why. Why would generally look at the value it brings to that stakeholder's work area. The E in INVEST stands for estimable. Your user story should be able to be estimated. How much complexity does that user story have? The S in INVEST stands for small. So your user story should be small enough to be finished in a few days or within the expectation of the release, okay? And finally, the T in INVEST stands for testable. If your user story is not testable, then it's not a good user story. You should be able to test it. And with having your full user story, you would have your acceptance criteria, which helps you to be able to test that requirement. So your acceptance criteria generally notes the conditions that are added to your user story as a definition of done, and it just helps your team to really know the step-by-step on how this user story will be delivered, taking into consideration other parts or other letters within this acronym of INVEST. Now, when writing your user stories or when you have received the cards from your product owner, there is something called the 3 C's, which looks at the card, the confirmation, and the conversation around these user stories. So these are other aspects that will help you also determine the good user story. And it's generally used within the agile environment where the product owner or the business analyst determines the who, the what, the why, your user stories within your card. And then we have that conversation with the team to see and apply the invest, see what we can negotiate, discuss what problems we are solving. And then there's a confirmation, which we do in order to avoid any confusions with the delivery of that requirement. This is a whole other topic. So user stories, for you to really write good user stories, there's a lot of things to consider. But as long as you and your team understand the user stories, the needs, the value, the impact it will have on your project or the stakeholders, you are good to go. I've also talked about user stories, how to write this, how to represent this in Jira. However, with writing your user stories, you can also split the user stories. And this is something else that I will cover in a masterclass within the Business Analyst School membership. If you'd like to look at these, click the link below so that you can join the membership and don't miss this opportunity. Thanks so much for watching. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this content. You never know who it might help. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in my next one.